It began as a whisper. Far beyond the edge of the known universe, in a galaxy older than memory, something stirred. The stars there had burned longer than most civilizations had existed. But now, they were going out, not fading with age, but being taken. In a small, silent control chamber, buried deep under the crust of a forgotten world, an ancient machine finally failed. Its last act was to send a signal, a desperate message, encoded in light and fear. It was not loud. It did not scream. It whispered. The signal crossed endless space. It passed by empires, some proud, some dying. It passed by peaceful planets, warships, black holes, and ruins. Most who heard it didn't understand. Those who did, pretended not to. Too afraid, too small, too late. The message was simple. The darkness has come. It eats the light. It eats the mind. We are falling. Help. No one answered. Not the proud Ilari, who once ruled 1,000 stars. Not the silent Vex, who lived in the magnetic fields of neutron stars. Not the cold machines of the Sirenet hive, who calculated survival and chose to ignore the call. The signal reached many. They turned away. Until it reached Earth. Earth had changed. After centuries of war, famine, and struggle, humanity had finally united. Not perfectly, but enough. They had spread across their solar system. They had cities on Mars, floating towns on Venus, massive stations in the asteroid belt. And beyond that, they had dreams. It was a group of young explorers, based on a deep space relay station, who first caught the signal. They didn't know what they had found. The data came in broken, nearly lost. But something about it felt wrong, too real. When the message was decoded, silence fell in the room. A voice, not human, cracked with fear, words that seemed to come from the end of time. A galaxy, begging for help, whispering through its last breath. Commander Sarah Lynn was the first to speak after hearing it. Send it to Earth Command. All of it. Within hours, the signal reached the heart of the Terran Alliance. The response was fast, not because it was urgent, but because it was familiar. Once, humanity had cried for help, during their darkest centuries. And no one came. They had survived alone. And they had sworn, no one would be left alone again. The Council of Earth gathered. Generals, scientists, leaders. Some said it was too far, too risky, too unknown. Others reminded them. That's exactly what others once said about humanity. But it wasn't just about honor. The signal wasn't only a cry. It carried data, images of dead stars, destroyed worlds, and strange patterns of energy that made no sense. Whole systems were missing, not exploded, gone. Planets turned to dust. Suns dimmed before their time. Civilizations erased. A silent threat. No name, no form, just gone. Dr. Malik, a lead astrophysicist, stood before the council and said only this: if we ignore this, we could be next. Maybe not today, maybe not in 100 years, but that darkness is moving. One day, it may knock on our door. That was all it took. A mission was approved. It wouldn't be a rescue. It would be a warning shot. A sign. Humanity would respond. They would find what was hiding in that dying galaxy. And if it had taken the light, humanity would bring the fire. The fleet would be built, silent, fast, powerful. They would send their best. Soldiers, scientists, explorers, not to colonize, not to conquer, but to stand. Because someone had whispered from the dark. And humanity was about to answer. The decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. Across Earth and every human colony, a single message spread. A galaxy is dying. We will not let it die alone. For many, it was a moment of pride. For others, it was fear. But deep inside, something awoke in every human heart. A sense of duty, of justice, of rage. The signal had spoken of darkness, of something ancient and terrible. And humanity didn't run from the dark. At the Terran Alliance Central Command, the greatest minds on Earth gathered. Scientists, strategists, engineers, and historians, all united for a mission like no other. They called it Project Vengeance, not for revenge, but for remembrance of every planet left to die, every voice left unheard, every cry that once echoed in silence. This time, someone would listen. The first ship was built in under 2 years, faster than light engines, black hole armor plating, AI defense systems, the best of everything humanity had. They named it the Deliverer, not because it would bring war, but because it would deliver a message to the stars. Humanity has arrived. Soon, other ships followed. The Valiant, the Torchbearer, the Last Hope, and the Iron Truth. Each one carried not just weapons, but people. Soldiers, doctors, engineers, and historians. They weren't just going to fight. They were going to witness what had happened, to learn, to survive, and, if needed, to burn the darkness out of the sky. On the day the fleet launched, the world stopped to watch. Children stood outside their homes, looking up at the sky. Old veterans saluted as the ships rose. Even the animals sensed something, a great storm forming far away. Commander Sarah Lynn stood on the bridge of the Deliverer. She looked out the glass as the stars shifted ahead of her. Behind her, Earth was small, blue, and beautiful. "We're not doing this for glory," she said. "We're doing this because someone has to." The stars bent as the fleet jumped into deep space. Humanity was on the move. For weeks, they traveled, past systems long dead, past stars with no light. They followed the signal, still repeating, still whispering. It grew clearer now, closer. But with each step forward, the silence grew deeper. Entire sectors were empty, planets missing, moons cracked like eggs. No bodies, no wreckage, just dust. Commander Lynn stood over a map with her crew. "Whatever did this doesn't leave a trace," a soft voice replied. It was Ensign Juno, a young analyst. "Maybe it doesn't have to." The room fell quiet. Then the first warning came. A probe ship, sent ahead of the fleet, went silent. No explosion, no damage, just off. Another followed. Same result. Gone. One by one, they lost contact with anything that left the fleet formation. A quiet panic began to grow. Scientists scrambled for answers. No signs of life. No heat. No energy. But something was there, watching. A presence. Cold. Patient. Ancient. It didn't strike. It waited. On the 39th day, they found it, or what was left of it. A dead world, floating in orbit around a black star, a planet that should not exist. No light, no heat, but signals still leaked from the surface, the same voice as the one that started everything. An old station, still half alive. The crew landed. Inside, they found a single survivor, not a person, but an AI, flickering, broken, and old. Its voice was slow, heavy, full of sorrow. "You shouldn't have come." Commander Lynn stepped forward. "Tell us what happened." The AI paused, as if trying to remember a dream too painful to speak. "They came from outside, not from space, but from under it, from between the stars. We called them the Eaters of Light. They do not speak. They do not think. They hunger." The crew listened, frozen. "They eat suns. They drink time. They do not die." A long silence. Then Commander Lynn replied, voice calm but burning. "Good. Let them try to eat us." They returned to the fleet. Humanity now had a name for the enemy, a shape in the dark, a nightmare made real. But they weren't afraid. Not anymore. Because Earth had sent its best, and they hadn't come all this way to run. They had come to fight. The human fleet reached the edge of the dead galaxy on the 70th day. The stars here were cold. The space around them didn't just look dark, it felt heavy. It was like the galaxy itself had stopped breathing. No signals, no gravity waves, no movement. Just silence. Commander Lin stood on the bridge of the Deliverer, staring into a black sky. "There should be stars here," she said quietly. Her navigator replied, "There were thousands once. Now only 12 remain. The rest are gone. Gone, not collapsed, not exploded, just erased." The fleet slowed down. Every ship ran quiet, engines low, weapons ready. They had entered what the ancient AI called the dead zone. No one knew what to expect. The science teams watched their screens. Nothing. No radiation. No life. No heat. It was like something had turned off the laws of physics. They passed by a ruined space station. Its surface was smooth, clean, too clean. No burn marks. No bullet holes. Just empty, like it had been dissolved by silence. Then something moved. A moon. Cold, dead, drifting slowly through space. But as the fleet scanned it, one ship, the torchbearer, picked up strange signals. Rhythmic pulses, almost like breathing. They sent a drone. As it approached, the signal grew louder. Then, without warning, it stopped. The drone was gone. No explosion, no trace, just gone, like it had never existed. The crew fell silent. "What was that?" someone whispered. Commander Lin clenched her jaw. A trap. But the mission had to continue. The fleet moved toward the heart of the dead zone, a region known only from the AI's memory. It had once been a thriving system of 9 planets. Now, there was nothing left but shadows and dust. There, they found something strange. A structure, huge, black, orbiting a dead star. It wasn't natural. It was shaped like a cage, but there was nothing inside it. Not anymore. The science team was confused. Is it a weapon? A station? "No," said Dr. Malik. "It's a prison." He pointed at the patterns burned into the metal. Symbols from dozens of lost civilizations. This was built by those who lived here, together. It wasn't made to keep something out. It was made to lock something in. Commander Lin's eyes narrowed. And now it's empty. Suddenly, the ship's lights dimmed. The power didn't fail, but something touched the systems. An invisible hand. Sirens flared. Screens went white. A single word appeared across every display. Hunger. The voice was not typed. It wasn't spoken. It was felt, inside their heads. Crew members dropped to their knees, holding their ears. Some bled from the nose. Others screamed. Commander Lin stood strong. "Shut it out. Block the transmission." They did. Slowly, painfully, the systems returned. But now, they knew. It was here. Whatever lived in the dark had noticed them, and it was hungry. But so was humanity, hungry for answers, for justice, for revenge. They had not come across half the universe just to turn back. The next day, the fleet found a ghost. A ship, not human, drifting near the edge of a black planet. It was a ruin from a race long thought extinct, the Ilari. Inside, they found no bodies, but one recording still worked. It showed what had happened. Darkness. A wave. No shape. No form. But it entered the ship, not with force, but with thought. Systems shut down. Crew members walked into the walls. Some stopped breathing. Others turned on each other. One Ilari officer had survived long enough to say, "It doesn't need ships. It doesn't need weapons. It eats hope." Then the screen cut out. That night, no one on the human fleet slept. Even with guards posted, even with the ships locked down. Something was watching. Not from outside the hulls, but from behind the stars. From inside the dark. and it had waited long enough. The human fleet was on edge. Since entering the dead zone, they had lost 2 drones, seen technology fail, and felt watched. The darkness wasn't just around them. It was inside everything. Systems glitched. Crew members reported nightmares. Some claimed to hear whispers when the lights dimmed. But still, they moved forward. Because in that galaxy of death, they had found something new. A signal. Weak. Broken. But alive. And human ears weren't the first to hear it. It came from an asteroid belt that didn't belong. It was jagged, unnatural. The remains of shattered moons and lost ships. At the center floated a single rusted station, barely holding together. The signal pulsed from deep inside. It wasn't like the warning they'd heard before. This one was clearer, structured, almost hopeful. Commander Lin ordered a team to investigate. The shuttle approached slowly, lights off, shields up. Inside were 5 of the fleet's best. Captain Rice, Special Forces. Dr. Malik, Scientist. Ensign Juno, young and brilliant. 2 Marines, Pike and Dawson, both silent but ready. As they entered the station's docking bay, everything went quiet. No lights, no gravity, no heat. But the signal grew stronger. Juno whispered, "It's calling us." Rice frowned. "Try not to answer back." Inside, the station was a graveyard. Walls scratched, machines melted, air stale and cold. No bodies, just empty clothes, like the people had vanished into air. The team moved through hallways lit only by helmet lights. Then, a sound. Faint, metallic, like breathing, through wires. Dr. Malik followed it. A heavy door sat frozen shut. The Marines forced it open. Inside was a chamber, dark, but something blinked. A single machine, half buried in wires, half covered in dust. Broken, flickering. An AI core. And it was alive. They powered it up slowly. Its voice came weak, cracking like old wood. "Hello." Captain Reyes stepped forward. "We're from Earth. Who are you?" A long pause. Designation, ARA, Archive Relay Assistant, built by the Yetheri. Juno gasped. The Yetheri went extinct 6,000 years ago. The AI paused again. Yes, because of them. What followed was horror. The AI showed them records. Glimpses, not full videos, just still images, audio logs, and sensor data. Planets crumbling into dust. Stars turning off mid-burn. Ships imploding from within, without ever being touched. And in the background, always the same thing. A moving shadow with no form. A voice without sound. A hunger without a body. An enemy without a face. They came not from space, but from between, the AI said. They feed on light, on energy, on thought, on memory. Dr. Malik asked, "How did you survive?" The AI hesitated. "I didn't. I was locked here. Damage. Forgotten. Alone. I watched as my creators disappeared one by one, into silence." It paused again. "You shouldn't be here. You're still warm, still burning. They will come for you." Ray stepped forward. "We're not like the others." The AI's light dimmed. Neither were the Yetheri. They screamed, and no one answered. But then the AI did something unexpected. Its lights flickered, and a panel opened. Inside, a crystal chip, still glowing. "This is everything we learned. Data, weaknesses, patterns. Not enough to win, but enough to survive." Juno stepped forward and took it carefully. The AI said one last thing. "You're the first to come here. Not begging to be saved, but ready to fight." Maybe that's what the darkness fears. As the teen returned to the shuttle, the station shook. Sensors screamed. Movement, massive. Approaching fast. Something was coming. Something that had noticed their presence. Rise looked back at the station. "Burn it," he said. They launched a plasma torpedo. As they flew away, the station exploded, taking with it the last shadow of the Yetheri. But the chip, and the truth, was now in human hands. Back aboard the Deliverer, Commander Lin held the crystal. "So they do bleed," she said. Dr. Malik nodded. "Not easily, but yes." And across the fleet, every captain received one message: prepare for contact. The fleet moved deeper into the dead zone. They had no choice now. The darkness, whatever it was, had noticed them. The fleet had its first taste of what it could do. The AI's warning had been clear. It feeds on light, energy, and memory. But humanity wasn't turning back. The truth was in their hands. The Eaters of Light would know the taste of their wrath. Commander Lin stood at the center of the war room, staring at the holographic map that displayed the fleet's progress. Her jaw tightened. "What's our status?" she asked. Dr. Malik, standing beside her, answered without looking up. "We've crossed into the core system of the enemy's domain. We've encountered a significant energy anomaly. It's like a gravity well, but moving, pulsing." Lin's eyes narrowed. "We're being tracked." "That's an understatement," Malik said grimly. "Something out there is watching us. Every movement we make, it knows. It's waiting." Ensign Juno, who had been quietly running calculations on a nearby terminal, spoke up. "The chip from the Yetheri, it wasn't just about the enemy's weaknesses. It showed us their patterns. They don't attack directly. They surround. They choke. It's not about brute force. It's about control. They starve you." "So, we starve them first," Lin said. "We're done waiting. Prepare for the first strike." The fleet was ready. Every ship now had a target, one of the moving, shadow-like anomalies that seemed to pulse through the darkness like the heartbeat of a dead galaxy. The ships were positioned in tight formation, ready to hit hard and fast. As they advanced toward their target, the eerie silence that had followed them for weeks began to break. The distortion, sharp, like a flicker of light in the dark. Then another. It came from everywhere, from every direction. A wave, an explosion of energy, not a physical attack, but a signal. It was inside their heads. It whispered, "Turn back." The voice, if it could be called that, was not one of malice. It was calm. It was the voice of inevitability, of something ancient, too old to care. But they didn't turn back. "Now," Lin ordered. The fleet opened fire. Energy blasts tore through the blackness, cutting through the void like lightning in the storm. They weren't just firing at random. The ships fired in perfect coordination, aiming for specific anomalies where the darkness seemed to gather thickest. But the enemy didn't strike back. Not immediately. It simply moved. The shadows dispersed. And that's when the first wave came. Not ships, not creatures, but something worse. A cloud of pure darkness. It surrounded their ships, wrapped them in an all-encompassing, crushing force. No light, no heat, just nothing. The crew felt the temperature drop. Their systems faltered. Weapons sputtered out of control. And then, silence. The darkness waited. "They're testing us. Rise," the Special Forces captain said, watching the chaos unfold, "seeing how we react." Commander Lin's voice was calm, but her eyes burned. "Then let's give them something to react to." The human fleet began a new strategy: divide and conquer. The Deliverer and Torchbearer would lead the charge, pulling the darkness toward them. The other ships would scatter, targeting smaller anomalies on the outskirts. They needed to draw the enemy's attention, to keep them from organizing, from feeding on their weakness. But even in the face of this terrifying new force, humanity fought like they always had, with fire, with willpower, and with the burning knowledge that they had nothing left to lose. The first blow landed. The Deliverer was the first to engage. As the ship cut through the cloud of darkness, a pulse shot from its weapons array, breaking apart the void that surrounded it. But the darkness didn't retreat. Instead, it hunted the ship, trying to collapse in on it. Inside the ship, the crew could feel it. The oppressive weight of an enemy that wasn't just physical but mental. Something tried to reach into their thoughts. Something tried to feed on their fear. But they didn't give in. They fought it off, running diagnostics as quickly as they could, rerouting power to maintain their weapons. Fire again, Lin shouted. Another burst of light. Another strike. This time, the darkness flinched. It didn't vanish, but it recoiled. A cheer erupted from the crew. But then, something unexpected happened. A massive figure appeared, not in front of them, but behind them. A shape, a creature. A massive thing that was not quite solid, not quite alive, but hungry. It was a horror beyond comprehension, made from the darkness itself. Its tendrils reached out, closing in on the deliverer like a giant, monstrous spider. Ray shouted, "Brace for impact." The creature struck. For a moment, the bridge was flooded with noise, alarms, shouts, the shudder of the ship as it was torn in every direction by the force of the attack. But then, something miraculous happened. Humanity fought back. The crew on the bridge worked as one, every hand moving in perfect sync. Lin grabbed the controls. She pulled the ship, guiding it out of the creature's grasp. Their engines roared to life, pushing the ship back into the battle. They had wounded it. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The fleet had regrouped after their first confrontation with the creature from the darkness. They had scored a victory, but it was a small one. The enemy was ancient, powerful, and relentless. Humanity had barely scratched the surface of what was coming. But one thing had changed. Now, the darkness feared them. Commander Lin paced the war room, eyes fixed on the holographic map. Every ship was accounted for, every soldier ready. The enemy was not just a monster or a creature. It was a force that had wiped out entire civilizations, entire galaxies. Yet here, in the heart of the dead zone, humanity had made a stand. "Prepare for the final push," Lin ordered, her voice cold and determined. The Yetheri data chip had revealed everything they needed to know. The creature wasn't alone. It was a hive, a collective consciousness formed from the remnants of countless species and civilizations it had consumed. But despite its overwhelming power, it had one weakness. The creature was only strong when it was in the darkness, when it could feed. And the more it consumed, the more it became one with the void. Its true form had been lost, consumed by its own hunger. But it still feared the light, still hated anything that threatened its insatiable appetite. Humanity's answer: the sun. The plan was simple: bait the creature out into the light, where it would be vulnerable. Then, with everything they had, break the hive's control and destroy the creature once and for all. The fleet would move to the center of the enemy's domain, where the gravity well pulsed. There, they would set off a massive solar flare, a weapon that would blind the creature and expose it to the power of the sun. And as the fleet deployed, the deliverer would be the tip of the spear, drawing the creature in, luring it toward its doom. The tension was thick. Every crew member knew this was it, the moment that would define their fate. They would either break free of the darkness or be consumed by it. But they were ready. The fleet moved into position. Lin, standing on the bridge of the deliverer, stared at the black void outside the windows. Her crew was at their stations, preparing for what was to come. "On my mark," Lin said, her voice calm. "We go straight into the heart of the gravity well. Brace yourselves. It won't be easy." "Understood, Commander," said Captain Rice, his face grim but resolute. And then, without hesitation, the deliverer surged forward. As they crossed the threshold of the dead zone, the stars around them seemed to bend. The air in the ship grew heavy. The sensors began to whine and glitch, warning of something large, something ancient, just beyond the edges of their detection range. The creature was coming. It was waiting. Suddenly, the darkness erupted around them. A shadow, impossibly large, stretching across the void, its tendrils reaching out toward the fleet, like a living storm. "Brace for impact." Lin shouted. The ship rocked violently as the first tendril slammed into the deliverer. The hull groaned under the pressure, the lights flickering. Crew members scrambled to keep the ship steady. "We've got incoming," said Ensign Juno, her fingers flying across the console. "It's here. It's everywhere." But Lin remained focused. She could feel it. The creature's hunger. It was like a pressure in the air, a coldness in her chest. "We need to keep it close," Lin said. "It can't escape into the shadows. We draw it to the center." The fleet began to move, cutting through the blackness like a blade through fog. The solar flare was ready, primed to be launched at the heart of the enemy's domain. But the creature wasn't going down without a fight. Suddenly, the ship's alarm screamed. The crew looked up to see the shadows coalescing, forming into something more solid, more dangerous. It was the creature, its true form, a nightmare of shifting darkness, with hundreds of glowing eyes, each one watching them, each one seeking to consume them. The deliverer was directly in its path. Lin gritted her teeth. This was it. "Release the flare," she commanded. The flare was launched. The energy wave shot forward, a brilliant burst of light that sliced through the darkness, illuminating the void like the dawn of a new star. And for a brief moment, the creature screamed. The shadows recoiled, flashing in an explosion of dark energy. But then, as if recognizing the threat, the creature grew even larger, more powerful, its tendrils tearing through the void. The fleet had no time left. "Ready the second flare," Lin shouted. But the creature was faster now. It slammed into the deliverer, shaking the ship to its core. The crew stumbled, barely holding onto their stations as the creature's tendrils began to pierce the hull. "Get the second flare online now," Ray shouted. Juno nodded, working frantically. "It's almost there. One more second." And then, just as the creature's tendrils wrapped around the deliverer, the second flare shot into the heart of the dark force. The flare exploded, blinding the entire fleet. The creature howled, the darkness ripping apart as it was exposed to the sunlight for the first time in millennia. The tendrils writhed, and the massive form began to collapse in on itself. For a moment, everything was still. Then, slowly, the darkness began to fade, like a receding tide. The creature, the hive, was dying. The deliverer was battered, bruised, but alive. Commander Lin's voice was steady as she looked out into the emptiness. "We did it. The darkness is gone." But she knew this victory wasn't just about the battle they had won. It was about what it meant for the future of humanity. They had beaten the darkness. They had proved that no matter how ancient the enemy, no matter how vast the threat, humanity could fight.